All set? You good? Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Is mic on? All right. It is good to see everybody. Lots and lots of familiar faces here. I think there were probably 100 lifetimes worth of IMCOM experience just here in the room. So just easy questions as I'm talking because, you know, I've got 2.5 years IMCOM experience and I can imagine decades here with many of the folks that we have on the seats right now. But it is very good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you're here today for the first Warrior Corner of the 2023 AUSA Exposition and Symposium. Sergeant Major Copeland and I, this is Sergeant Major Jason Copeland, Omar Jones, the Commanding General, Installation Management Command. We have the best jobs in the entire Army. And it really is an absolute privilege to spend a couple minutes with you talking about what we do and talking about what those 60,000 professionals you just saw on the screen do around the entire Army. Because we find that as we travel the Army, the first question we get most times when we talk to an audience is, I didn't realize that Army Material Command did that. I didn't realize Installation Management Command did that. I didn't realize the Army did that for soldiers, families, civilians, soldiers for life. So hopefully we can inform you a little bit about all those great things that happen on every single Army installation in support of Army people. Let's go to the next slide, please. So we're going to talk about just 3 things. We're going to talk about what we're for, which I think is important. Why does the Army have Installation Management Command? Why is it part of Army Materiel Command? We'll talk about who we are, distributed around the world, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what we do and what we do in support of senior commanders around the world. Next slide, please. So right there at the top, that is what we're for. That is why the Army has an Installation Management Command, and those 60,000 professionals that we talked about, that is what they're out there trying to do every single day for the Army, is to make sure that the experience on an Army installation is an experience like home. I mean, you think about it, probably just today, as you've talked to people since you got here, usually in the first couple minutes of a conversation, you get to the point, where are you living now? Where are you from? Where's home? For most soldiers and Army families, the answer to that question is an Army installation. And our job is to provide that home. When you think about home, home is where you feel safe, you're protected. Home is where you have a community. Home is where you go to work to and come back from. Home is where you have got the same experience, the same values, the same culture to define where you are from. It is our job to make sure that whether you are at Fort Liberty, Fort Bliss, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Schofield Barracks, over in Germany, etc., the Army experience or the Army installation, it is home. And we provide that for every single soldier, family, soldier for life, and Army civilian.
So what does that mean for the sergeant majors and the NCOs? As we talk about infrastructure, we talk about all of the different things that we do to make that installation a home. What is it that the key elements that they need for those families that are there? That's what we mean when we say home. I know I joke all the time with my family, hey, we need a, you know, we all have the home is where the Army sends us, and we got all of the locations that you've been stationed. When I started working with Lieutenant General Jones, I said, hey, we may need a little bit more of those placards to put underneath that because we're responsible for making it home for every single family that's in the Army. And I think we're going to give you a brief setup of how we go about doing that, but also how we support senior commanders and those senior command sergeant majors that are out there.
Thank you, Sir Major. We can go to the next slide, please. So if that's what we're for, this is who we are. So first and foremost, the Army has the 4 4-star commands: Forces Command, Training and Doctrine Command, Army Materiel Command, and Army Futures Command. We are part of Army Materiel Command. So my commander, General Charles Hamilton, we support him as he looks at the strategic support area and all the things that happens there to support our Army and what it does for the Joint Force and what it does for the nation. 80 installations around the world. 74 of them have garrisons, whether it's lieutenant colonel or colonel commander with a command sergeant major, and all of the people there and the resources to provide that home on those installations. 6 of them have Army support activities. That means it's a non-Army led base, typically led by the Air Force, but that way we still have an IMCOM leadership team there to make sure we have taken care of those soldiers, those families, civilians, etc. So 80 installations around the world where we're providing that home for Army people. Go to the next slide, please. So this is what we do. And I think the key is up there in the upper right corner, because all 3 military departments approach installation management in a different way. The Army is a command-centric service, and that is just part of our culture, and that's part of who we are, and that's the approach we take to installation management. So every installation out there has a senior commander, typically a general officer, whether it's a division commander, a corps commander, a center of excellence commander, directed by the Secretary of the Army to command that installation. And just like all commanders are responsible for everything that installation does and fails to do. Our job is to support them. Use our people, use our resources, use our expertise to accomplish their priorities on that installation. The 4 things you see up there, they're the 4 things we do to support senior commanders. First, soldier and family programs. Second, sustain the infrastructure of the regular Army. Third is support deployability, training readiness and deployability of all the formations on that installation. And then fourth is base op services. And usually when I say that, a couple eyebrows go up and say, what is this bald guy talking about? I'll come back to that one in a couple minutes, because cities don't work without base op services. But those are the 4 things we do. But every single thing we do is in support of those senior commanders who are directed by the Secretary of the Army to command those places, those 80 installations out there around the world. You can go to the next slide, please. So as you look at our first core competency, deliver soldier and family programs, and each of our slides look kind of similar. If you look on this side of the slide, that's a place on the installation that is run by the garrison. It is run by IMCOM in support of that senior commander. The other side of the slide are just a subset of the many programs that we provide in this core competency. Here are soldier and family programs, and just a few that I will talk about. So child care. You've heard the Secretary talk about child care, you've heard the Chief of Staff talk about child care. Making sure child care is available and affordable for soldiers and families, absolutely critical to readiness. When we worked through the COVID pandemic a few years ago, 2 critical things we did to make sure we supported readiness for the Army. 1 was keep the commissaries open. Defense Commissary Agency did that. But 2, IMCOM kept child care open and available to make sure that soldiers' families were taken care of, so soldiers were able to do the training they needed to do, be part of the teams that they're on to build readiness for our Army. And that's what child care is all about. It's either child development centers, school-age centers, those places on the installation where soldiers can go to and have their kids both cared for and developed. We have family child care providers where an Army family will say, I want to do this at the same standard but in my home on the installation. And third is Army fee assistance, where we'll provide fee assistance so soldiers and their families can get child care off the installation, again, so they can do what they need to do to support their team, build readiness for the Army. The second one, and if you went to the opening ceremony today, you saw back as we looked through the Army's history, Army Community Services. Every installation of those 80, pretty much, has an Army Community Services office, and that is all about, again, supporting readiness. If an Army spouse wants to re-enter the workforce, wants to stay in the workforce, is thinking about it, all they have to do is walk in Army Community Services and say, I'm thinking about this. Army Community Services will help them out with that entire process. Again, that commitment from the Army senior leaders to supporting Army families while they support their soldiers across the board. But ACS and all the programs it offers, new parent support programs, financial readiness programs, all be in the face of that commitment from Installation Management Command, the garrisons, in support of senior commanders to take care of Army people across the board. Last one that I'll mention up here is Morale, Welfare, Recreation Services. Who here has gone to an MWR bowling alley, MWR golf course? I'm seeing smiles but no hands. Okay, Paul Schaefer raised his hand. But across the board, all of those programs, they get back to an installation being a home, an installation being a community, so that soldiers and families, Soldiers for Life, can go there and have a common experience from one installation to another installation to another one to, again, build that community, that same set of values across the board as they are reinforcing what it means to be on the Army team. That's what MWR is all about. Taking care of soldiers, taking care of families, taking care of Soldiers for Life. Sorry, Major?
So, thank you, sir. So you've heard all about the family programs, and we take great care of our families. But what about those single soldiers that are out there? So we have the Better Opportunity for Single Soldiers program. We also have Warrior Venture Quest for those that are in the units and they want to do all of those different types of things. the better opportunities for single soldiers absolutely is the voice of the soldiers that are living in those unaccompanied housing. It's what we're nested with the tenant units that are there to find out exactly what is it that you want to see in there. What is keeping you and retaining you in the Army? As we all know, quality of life is where they live and where they work. So through that program, we learn a lot about what's the next generation of soldier look like, what do they want to have, and what is it that motivates them to go out and do the business that we ask them to do, and that's to defend this nation.
Next slide, please. So the second thing we do to support senior commanders is sustain that infrastructure for installations for the regular Army around the world. And infrastructure is everything from the motor pools, the airfields, the hangars, but it's also the roads, the power lines, everything underground, water, wastewater, all of those kind of things. But there are really just two I want to highlight here. First is privatized housing. So the Army has 100,000 homes around the world. 10,000 of them we're responsible for, we own, that are primarily overseas, but some here, Joint Base Meyer, Henderson Hall, a couple other places, 10,000 Army-owned homes. The other 90,000 are privatized. But those privatized housing, the Army's responsibility is oversight. And make sure those homes are the right quality, make sure those homes are safe, make sure those homes are secure, so as Army families move into those homes, they can feel comfortable that this is a place where they want to live, a place where they want to raise their family, and again, back to being that home for the Army on each and every installation. We have 6 privatized companies out there that we work with every single day, making sure that those houses meet those standards and the expectations of Army families and soldiers around the world. The other piece I want to talk about, and I can see looking around the room, we have a number of partners here from industry, particularly from energy service companies and some of our other industry partners that are out there. A critical priority for the Army leaders, and really for the Department of Defense leaders right now, is to make sure that our installations are resilient. Resilient not just from the effects of climate, think about storms, floods, those kind of things, but also resilient to make sure that if we have complete reliable access to electricity, complete reliable access to water, etc. We cannot do that in support of senior commanders without our industry partners. And for the industry partners that are out here today, I'll talk to many of you here the next few days, but just thank you for your partnership. We have made great strides the past few years making the Army more resilient, and I'm very excited about the path we are on and where we're going to be in the future to make sure each and every installation is able to be a resilient place for people to work and for the Army to project power at any place in the world. Sir Major?
Thank you, sir. And so quality housing, right? Again, for the unaccompanied personnel housing, the barracks. What we are doing is assisting those tenant units and the senior commanders and ensuring that we can nest how the barracks are being managed, how the soldiers are going in, the same emphasis that we place in housing, how soldiers are going into their rooms, how are they exiting their rooms, what kind of service orders do we need to complete on there, and what kind of work orders, and what is the overall status of the infrastructure that we have our soldiers living in, so that we make sure that the money that is allocated to go there is specifically addressing all of those concerns, and that we have quality housing for our single soldiers and unaccompanied personnel.
Thank you, Sir Major. And so many of you, did everyone hear the first part of what I said? Hopefully, I'd really rather not repeat it, at least some nods back there. So you heard the Secretary of the Army this morning about hers and the Chief of Staff and Sir Major Weimer's commitment to the Army, significant commitment to the barracks for the Army, significant investment over the next 10 years in the range of $1.2 billion a year into our barracks, 100% sustainment funding to make sure that preventative maintenance, response to work orders, all of those things are taken care of to, just like Sir Major Copeland said, that same expectation of safe, secure, quality housing for our single soldiers as well as for our soldiers and families in the housing I spoke about previously. Go to the next slide, please. So our third core competency is support to readiness and deployability. When you think about what the Army does for the Joint Force, at home station, the Army's focus is on building readiness. So when the Army has to deploy from the strategic support area, it is ready to accomplish whatever mission our combatant commanders ask those Army formations to do. It starts with simulation centers, It goes through small arms ranges, multi-purpose range complexes, training areas, all of those things that happen on installation to make sure those resources are there, from individual soldier training, small unit training, large unit collective training, to support all of that so commanders have the tools they need to build the readiness that the Army has directed them to achieve. But then when it's time to deploy, when it's time to get on an airplane, we're responsible for making sure that airfield is ready to go, support those soldiers. Put their equipment on trains to ship it wherever it needs to go around the world. That railhead, we're responsible for making sure it has the right capacity and that it is ready to support that unit deploying in whatever time frame the Army standards put out there to make sure that unit can go where it needs to go any place in the world. Next slide, please. So this is the one that, again, usually get the eyebrows go up. People say, what's this guy talking about? But base op services. I mean, think about a city, even like Washington, D.C., think about wherever you're from. All of those services that take a city to run, everything from custodial services and groundskeeping, landscaping, all that kind of stuff, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, from fire, emergency services, law enforcement, and everything in between. Garrison commanders are basically city managers, and they do all the things on an Army installation like a city manager does on any city around the world. And some of our installations, you think about Fort Cavazos, Fort Liberty, Lewis McChord, those are pretty darn big cities. But if you think senior commanders, they're the mayors. They're in charge of those cities. But the garrison commanders, the IMCOM team, we're the city managers. And we do all of these services here in support of those mayors, those senior commanders, to keep those cities running. Sir Major?
Yes, sir. And so in order to keep that city running, and then also when it's time for them to leave, we have the MPDs, or the Military Personnel Directorate, that helps with the orders. We're nested and synchronized, integrate all of the, from HRC to transportation, with ASC, to working with anyone, AUSA FinCom, when it comes to doing those smart vouchers. Make sure that your soldiers are doing the smart vouchers. They get paid faster, and they understand where it is in the process. We work with G9 and working with the EFMP and the medical community to ensure that all of that is synchronized so that it makes the move as smooth as possible. We've all moved, it's horrible, but we just want to make sure that when you get your orders from, you know, as they say in Germany, from plane to pillow, you are taken care of, and family members can feel as though we have their backs when it comes time to move.
Thanks, Sir Major. We can go to the next slide, and one more, please. Do we have the app slide in the back there? Nope. You can go back to one with the flag, please. So what I do want to highlight before we open up for question and answer, what you'll hear from General George tomorrow or Wednesday during the Senior Leader Town Hall Forum for the families, he's going to talk about where we are going with a new Army app called My Army Post, and really an opportunity to make sure that soldiers and families, Army civilians, soldiers for life, have access at their fingertips to all of the information about all the programs and services that are out there, immediate information about what gates are open, what gates are closed, which ones have backups, the hours of the fitness centers, but basically a one-stop shop for all soldiers and families so they can open up the app and find out everything they need to know about the installation. So while we're doing Q&A, if you want to download or at least take a picture of the QR code, it will take you a brief video, about a minute or so, about the My Army Post app, and have a survey afterwards. Please download it, share it with other folks that are here. We've got a booth downstairs in the installation assembly area where you can actually get on a phone and mess around with the app in addition to seeing the video. But this is where the Army is going. I'd like to publicly thank Army Futures Command and the Army Software Factory. This is soldiers developing for soldiers. So this has been soldiers in the software factory in Austin, talking to soldiers, talking to leaders, figuring out what is it that soldiers and families need, developing this app, and then iterating with our Chief of Staff to get an app that is going to be useful around the entire Army. And I think this will be rolled out here Army-wide early in FY24, so just in a few months here. But we want to get your feedback. So hit the QR code with your picture, with your camera, do the survey, give us feedback, go to the installation assembly area, check it out, and let us know what we can do better as we continue to develop this to roll it out across the Army. So before we open up for questions, I just want to thank you all for being here. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time. I appreciate your interest in what Installation Management Command, Army Materiel Command does in the strategic support area on those 80 installations around the world. Hopefully you heard from Sergeant Major and I, we love what we do. I mean, 60,000 professionals around the world, 80 installations, hopefully making life better for soldiers, families, commanders, soldiers for life, and civilians every single day. I can't think of a more rewarding job in the Army, and it is absolutely a privilege to command Installation Management Command. So let me open it up. What's on your mind? And since I do know most of the people that are sitting, I can call on you if no one asks any questions. So, please. Yeah.
Hi, sir. Kimberly Underwood from Signal Magazine at AFC International. Can you talk about, if you can, kind of the future of your training environments, the live, virtual, constructive, and kind of how you're going to modernize those training centers, complexes, and aids? Thank you.
Can everyone hear Kimberly's question? Josh, could you hear it? Okay. So how we modernize particularly our simulation tools, the mission training centers, et cetera. And I'm going to answer your question, but I'm also going to punt a little bit if that's okay. Because I know you will have representatives here from PEO STE, and those are the right people to talk to, because as they look at One World Terrain, they look at all of the things that Army Futures Command is looking at for the future of the Army, that ASALT is developing in terms of equipment that are out there. PEO STRI are the ones that are making sure that we have the tools available to make sure soldiers can train in a virtual environment, constructive environment, before they go out live. Our job is to make sure those facilities exist. So as they tell us, here's the simulator we need, here's the capability we need, we make sure that that facility is there, has the right professionals to run it, and to make sure the connection is there, that a soldier is able to start in a virtual environment and then work their way to a live environment, both individually and with their teams, virtually up to live. But that is the commitment as we go forward. We will provide those as PEO STRI figures out what do those systems need to be in each of those training centers going forward. So thank you, Kimberly. What else?
Hey, sir. Right here.
Yeah, go ahead,
Hey,
thanks.
Sir. Thanks for your time today, Sergeant Major, thanks.
Yes, sir.
The Army Climate Strategy Implementation Plan calls for a microgrid on every installation by 2035. What do you need from industry in order to make that happen?
Okay, Josh, same thing. Hear that one? Okay. So we have made tremendous strides as an Army in the past 2.5 years. I would say both in our energy resilience, but also in our relationship with industry. And what we need from industry as we look at microgrids, and really it is all the other components of that. How are we going to do storage? How are we going to do transmission? How are we do power generation? All of those. I'm an infantry officer. Yeah, I know how to do infantry things pretty darn well, but I am not an expert when it comes to microgrids and those things. What we need is the expertise of industry to come to the table and help us figure out how we can meet those goals in a way that is most effective, most resilient, but also most efficient as we look at government resources going forward. But it's a dialogue that has to happen. And again, I'm going to meet with many of the energy companies tomorrow. We had many of them come to San Antonio in May. We're going to do it again this year to have that dialogue going so we can see what are those best practices that we can learn from industry that we can consider on the installations to accomplish those goals going forward. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, please. Let's say, when we do one in the front, one in the back. How about that? So here and here. So, why don't you go first, and then we'll hit the back next. Go ahead, thanks.
Alex Morrison, I'm with a software development company here. I'm curious, you guys talked a lot about housing, safety. Is there a, sorry for the sophomore question, is there a standard across the Army, and how do you handle inspections?
There absolutely is. And what I'll talk, so the question was about housing inspections. And what I will talk specifically about, probably a good example that answers your question, is what we call between occupancy maintenance. So when a family moves out of a house, it's privatized, because the privatized companies own the home when we privatized. But when a family moves out and they do whatever maintenance they have to do to get that house ready to be occupied by another Army family, they do the quality control. They check their work and make sure it's straight. but a government employee, someone from that garrison representing that senior commander, comes out and they have a quality assurance checklist, and they go down and they make sure that that house is ready. Because again, our obligation as the Army is to make sure that house is safe, secure, and at the right quality before a family moves into it. We share those checklists with all 6 of those companies. They know what right looks like. They know what that inspection is going to be before it happens, but we make sure that before any family moves in, someone representing the U.S. Army has done that quality assurance inspection to make sure that house is ready to go. Yeah. Please, go ahead.
Yes, sir, thank you. Connor Crehan, Army veteran. Thank you for your time today, sir. Sergeant Major. You showed one slide up there that displayed all the different services that are afforded to soldiers and their families at each post. From what I understand, unless things have changed, not all posts are created equal. So how do you supplement when a particular need is there for soldiers and their family, but that's not provided on that particular post?
I'm going to answer the question the other direction, then come back to you if that's okay, and I'm going to bring Sergeant Major Copeland into the conversation. What we have done is that make sure that the baseline is available, is consistent across all the installations. But each installation is different. And going back to, as I talked about how the Army does installation management may be different than the other military departments, it's up to those senior commanders. So senior commanders will determine that based on their community, based on their assessment, the mission on that installation, here are the services, the resources, the programs that they need, and maybe some others that they either want to downsize or don't need. And that is very much the Chief Staff of the Army's intent, is that that baseline of services can be tailored with available resources to meet the senior commander's intent. So while the Army, being the Army's home, that baseline experience should be consistent installation to installation. The service and programs will be tailored by that senior commander based on, they command the installation. What do they think the community needs, and what do they think maybe the community doesn't need? So the base experience will be the same, but tailored to best fit that unit, best fit that community, local area, et cetera. But Sergeant Major, any comments on that?
Yes, sir. So exactly what you... So exactly just what the CG said. A lot of times is speaking with the families and speaking with the soldiers and understanding the leadership at that installation, specifically what is the need and how can we get it. The CG always tells all of our garrison commanders and sergeant majors, you don't say no, you just figure out how we can get to the yes with the resources that we have. Sometimes that may be, hey, we're going to put more emphasis on a particular service on that installation, but we got to take away something else that you might want to do because it's more of a need for that particular resource on that installation.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. Other questions out there? Yeah, please, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Ahmed Mawari, TACOM G4. Thank you for the opportunity here. And thank you for giving us a look into the core competencies of IMCOM. My question is in areas of opportunities, in your 2.5 years at IMCOM, areas of opportunities where you think we can do better or can improve on over the next few years. Over.
Wow, Ahmed, that's a fantastic question. It was kind of inside the family coming from TACOM, but I appreciate that. So in terms of areas of opportunity, as I look back over the past really 4 years or so, really to February of 2019, I think we've done a tremendous job with housing, both Army-owned and privatized housing. Those 100,000 homes. Clearly, if one family is having a negative situation in their home, that's unacceptable, and there's still more work to do. But we have gotten to the place where what we're doing with housing works. We just have to make sure we're taking care of every single family across the board. But applying that same level of oversight, and you heard Secretary Wormuth talk about this morning, to our unaccompanied housing, to our barracks. So we have 2,008 unaccompanied housing, barracks buildings across the Army, permanent party barracks. Just over 80% of those are at the standard we want for our soldiers. But our focus is on that other 19%, getting those up to the right standard. Part of that is maintaining, that's that sustainment funds that we talked about a while ago, but also is restoration, modernization, fixing what we have, and then where we can, building new. So I think that's an opportunity where you're going to see a lot of focus and growth over the next few years, this year in particular, because that gets you after readiness and quality of life for our soldiers. Just like we've done with housing, we've got to do the same thing with our unaccompanied housing, with our barracks as well. I think the second area, I think is what we talked about earlier with energy. Great progress in the past 2 years, but I see that just accelerating in the next few years as we make our installations more resilient so that we can really continue to both take care of the installations and the people that live and work there, but also project power for the Army going forward. And then finally, I think the third one is continuing to reinforce that relationship we have both talked about between the garrison commander and the senior commander, allowing the senior commander to tailor what they want on their installation with the available resources to best support their community. But I think those three things, as I look to FY24, will be significant focus areas for that year and beyond. So, Ahmed, thank you. Please, yeah.
Hi, sir. Having worked career with Military Times, the issues with Barracks are widespread and well documented, as you mentioned. What could IMCOM do moving forward, and what could it have done in recent years to kind of prevent these conditions from arising on such a widespread scale? Or is it just a matter of insufficient funding?
I'm going to focus on going forward if I can, and I think there's probably three pieces to that. We've talked about the piece that we're responsible for in IMCOM, the sustainment funding, making sure that 100% sustainment funding. So that means preventative maintenance. We're going to do all the preventative maintenance required on barracks. When a soldier puts in a work order, hopefully using the Army maintenance application so we get it and we can make sure the right technician with the right tools comes out to make sure we have fixed that. The other piece of that is our counter mold operation. We've done this last year, increasing any mold related work order to a priority work order so it's responded to in 24 hours and making sure we're mitigating that as part of that commitment to, again, safe, secure, quality housing in the barracks as well. I know the Corps of Engineers is also looking at barracks designs to make sure it is best supportive of soldiers. And then across the Army Barracks Management Program, and I'll let Sergeant Major Copeland talk about this in a moment, ABMP, it reinforces the roles and responsibility of everybody. From the unit that has soldiers living in the barracks and the chain of command, to what the Corps of Engineers does, what Installation Management Command or Army Materiel Command does. So it's a whole of Army approach to make sure that soldier's living in the barracks, again, has that quality facility that they're living in, that quality home they're living in, just like we do for Army families going forward. But it's the whole of Army approach where we're going to be able to get where we need to be, get that last 19% to the same quality as the other 81%. But Sir, do you have any comments on ABMP in particular?
Yes, sir. So the Army Barracks Management Program is designed to give what I always say the answers to the tests. And what I'm doing in particular in the IMCOM is all of the garrison sergeant majors become subject matter experts on the ABMP process, and then what duties, roles, and responsibilities we have from not only in IMCOM, but what does the mission units have, what responsibilities do they have in putting soldiers into the rooms, taking soldiers out of the rooms, and ensuring that that's all the way nested from IMCOM through AMC to the Department of the Army on what we're supposed to do as senior non-commissioned officers to make sure that we're taking care of the nation's sons and daughters.
Thanks, Sir Major. Thank you. Please. Yeah.
Hi, sir. John Klein from Johnson
Good to see you,
Controls.
John.
Good to see you, sir. When you last met with industry, you talked about the data that you were gathering to make data-centric decisions, and it was really phenomenal. Are you happy with where you got? And if not, what are your plans for FY24?
That was a loaded question, John. Am I happy where I am? No. Am I happy with the path we're on? Absolutely. And if you've seen Secretary Wormuth's focus areas, one, making us a data-centric Army, data management, data analytics to support awareness and more informed decisions, all of that. We have absolutely embraced that in Army Materiel Command, Installation Management Command. Where we are in the past year, particularly for energy and water, and to be able to see that data is just tremendous improvement in the past year with great help from our teammates out of the Department of Energy and a number of other folks, to include our teammates in industry, but we're not there yet. I want to get to the point where I'm able to drill down to an individual building if I needed to, more importantly that a garrison commander can, a senior commander can. I can see it across 80 installations. At the Headquarters Department of the Army, they can see it across the Army in all three components, and we can see where we have opportunities to improve efficiency, we have opportunities to hopefully increase or improve affordability, but also we can see our resiliency better. So I'm very happy with the path we're on. We could always go faster in my mind, but where we've come in a year is tremendous. I'm excited about where we're going to be this time next year when we're all talking at AUSA. So thanks, John. Yeah. Please, yeah.
Thank you, sir, Sergeant Major. You spoke briefly about the retention efforts and speaking to the next generation of soldiers and figuring out who they look like. What role do you think IMCOM plays in the current recruitment struggles, and how you plan to address that, and any coordination you might have with recruitment?
You want to tag team?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a couple things, and you heard the Secretary talk about quality of life for single soldiers being a critical component of readiness. And the next step in that is a critical component to the future of the Army as well. Because as our soldiers today talk about their experience, whether it is back home, whether it's with friends and family, whatever it happens to be, and they talk about the positive quality of life they have in the Army and an Army installation, that's going to help folks get interested in the Army. The next piece is our garrison commanders, again, in support of senior commanders, seeking opportunities both on and off the installation to connect America's Army to America's people. Whether it is having events on the installation, maintaining security and all the things they have to do, but in a way that allows folks that don't know the Army and aren't familiar with the Army to come on and see an Army installation, see where soldiers live and work, and to have that experience. But then off the installation, our senior commanders have a responsibility back to the Secretary to connect to the local community. The garrison commanders support that, and to be able to help, whether it is out there personally talking, whether it is chambers of commerce meetings, other meetings, to again reinforce that connection between America's Army and America's people. And that's not on the American people to connect to us, that's us as an Army. It is our job to reach out and connect the American people so that they understand what it means to be part of this great Army. Sergeant Major, anything to add on that?
Absolutely, sir. So you hit the nail on the head. It's the community engagement. Soldiers telling their stories, why they joined the Army, where they live. When we say we're Army's home, what does your home look like on that installation? And then they go back out and they say, hey, it's not as bad as what you hear or what you see. It really and truly is an effort to get after taking care of them and ensuring that they know. We do a lot of this with the Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers, going to college campuses, seeing what activities they do on a college campus. We just recently had our forum where we brought everybody in and directly from the soldier, hey, what is it that you would like, what activities would you like to do on your installation? That we have all of these folks who do these same entertainment things on for college campuses, and why can't we just bring that on post? And then now they're saying, hey, on my downtime, I'm doing the exact same things that they're doing at college, or I'm doing the exact same things they're doing at a fair or whatever type of activities that they want to do. But it's more than just being a soldier and going out, but we're people as well. Because a lot of times when I speak to the community, it's like, wow, you're a soldier, but they don't think that you're real and that you're a person. So just making sure that we stay real to them, and then the next generation of soldiers that are out there in high school and colleges understand that life is good when they join the Army.
Thank you, Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
We're going to get, we'll take one last question, then we're going to get the hook. We got the 2-minute sign right now, but go ahead.
Okay, Phil Sakowicz, one of your
Good to
legacy
see you,
leaders.
Phil.
Yes. Excellent segue to my question is, so now that we want to help people to come on base, since you said, what are we doing technologically with base access to make it a little easier to get on base?
Every day, Phil. Trying to improve that process across the Army. It's aware, and I don't want to get too deep in the details of the AIE-4, but we're testing face recognition down at Redstone right now. So really streamlining the folks that already have access so they can get on the installation more quickly, without allowing the folks that don't have access, there's not a line in front of them. So they're able to get on more quickly as well. But then we also have opportunities like recreation passes, and particularly for our folks here, our media teammates that are here, I would ask you to highlight that one. Recreation passes, folks that have no Army affiliation, they can sign up at most installations, if approved by the senior commander, and get a recreation pass. And they can use many of the morale, welfare, recreation facilities, but that also allows them to see the installation and realize, wow, quality of life for soldiers and families is pretty darn good across the board. And then there's installation events that I talked about as well, Phil. So I'm going to close up with 4 points to wrap up. First, please use your camera, both scan the code, watch the video, give us feedback, but also take a picture of the code and share it. Typically you get 30 to 35,000 people attend this each year. My goal is to get 30 to 35,000 points of feedback back across the board, so please let us know. Secondly, for all our industry partners who are here, one, thank you. But two, Amy, raise your hand. So Amy DeLeon is from the MWR sponsorship team. So if you would think about, and you're thinking about how can I support Army Morale Welfare Recreation programs, please see Amy before you leave the Warriors Corner. Amy, stay right there, okay, or maybe come over here. Third, all the IMCOM professionals that are here, either currently or past, please raise your hand, which I think is almost my entire audience. That's what I thought, okay. A sincere thank you to each and every one of you, because all the things that we talked about that we do for soldiers, families, civilians, support our senior commanders, it wouldn't be possible without our legacy leaders like Phil, it wouldn't be possible without our current leaders that are out there serving today, particularly the garrison leadership teams. Thank you. So Sergeant Major Jason Copeland, Omar Jones, and we have the absolute privilege and probably the most rewarding job in the Army, Command and Installation Management Command. Enjoy the rest of the AUSA. Thank you.